Good afternoon. I'm Steve Gallagher, the homicide lieutenant. I'm here today to announce an arrest in the murder investigation of Anthony Whitley. He's a 37-year-old black male. On September 4th, 2016, at approximately 11 p.m., officers were dispatched to shots fired involving a crashed vehicle in the area of 4th and Grunthal. When they arrived, they found a gray Chevrolet Impala crashed into a fence near that area. It was in a residence front yard near the intersection. Inside the vehicle, they found Anthony Whitley deceased from multiple gunshot wounds. There was an open passenger door that indicated to officers, because of the blood trail leading away from it, that there was another occupant in the vehicle, at least one other occupant, suffering from gunshot wound possibly, but they were no longer at the scene. Homicide detectives responded to the scene and determined that the shooting actually occurred a couple of blocks away in the 1700 block of Dot Street, and it appeared that the victims were able to travel a short distance before crashing their car. At the original scene, detectives located evidence which consisted of shell casings, bullet fragments, and some other items that were linked to the crime. And while at the scene, detectives were notified that 20-year-old Marcus Glover was a second victim who showed up at the hospital suffering from gunshot wounds. When they responded to the hospital, Glover told the detectives that he and Whitley went to the location on Dot Street in order to sell guns to an individual that he knew. He said that while in the middle of the gun deal, a masked gunman approached the driver's door of the car and attempted to rob them. During that robbery attempt, Marcus said that he pulled his gun and there was a gunfight between he and the robber, and that's when Whitley was shot and killed. He said he attempted to drive away but then crashed the car. While also at the scene and the detectives continuing their investigation, they were notified of a second individual who walked into the hospital ER suffering from a gunshot wound to his hand. This individual matched the description of the shooter that stood at the driver's window during the robbery. His name is Devin Bartley, and he claimed to have been walking along the sidewalk several blocks away from where the incident occurred. He said that he heard gunshots. It was around the time of the shooting, and noticed that he was shot in his hand, and he went to a friend's to seek help and got a ride to the hospital. With limited information at that time and him denying ever being on Dot Street, detectives were able to obtain DNA at his consent, and he was released shortly after that. Using the information that the detectives obtained from Marcus Glover, they were able to locate the individual to whom the subject was that was trying to purchase the guns. This individual, his version of events matched those of Glover, being that he was in the car. They were making a gun deal when the robbery attempt occurred, and then the gunfight occurred. The detectives were also able to loosely link the individual in the car buying the guns and Bartley as associates. However, at this time, they're not able to prove that that subject did set up this robbery. As mentioned earlier, detectives found some evidence at the scene. One of the items of evidence that they found was a bullet fragment in the roadway where the shooter stood at the driver's window. That fragment was collected and submitted to FDLE for DNA processing. That fragment was processed by FDLE, and two profiles were found on the fragment. The first being the major contributor, which was the victim, and the second of the mix was that of Devin Bartley. The DNA analyst explained that the projectile must have traveled through the victim before striking Devin Bartley. Last week, the detectives were able to obtain an arrest warrant for Bartley. He came to the homicide office today, turned himself in. Following an interview, he was arrested and booked into the PDF for murder. Any questions? All right, thank you.